Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I'm going to be walking you through my Space and Ground skill tree recommendations for Star Trek Online in 2024. As always, chapters to everything are listed down below. And before I get too far into things, let's go over the mechanics of the skill tree here. So the first thing to note is that on the space side, you're going to have 46 points to work with, and on the ground side, you're going to have 10 points. The ground side does not have anywhere near the limitations that the space side has, because there's just not as much to it. But one big thing to note here with any of the skill tree options is that if you're looking to buy one of the further selections in a node, you do have to buy the things that precede that. So if I want to get improved weapon penetration, I have to buy weapon proficiency, then weapon penetration, and then I can buy improved weapon pen. As you'll see here, sometimes this does take a moment to go through. Sometimes even longer than that. And there, now I was able to buy improved weapon pen. And if I wanted improved weapon criticals again, I'd have to buy weapon criticals first. So there are some requirements there like that. And on the space side, an example of that would be if I wanted to get advanced hull capacity, I'd have to buy hull capacity and improved hull capacity first. Now for the space side, the extra set of limitations we have here is that there's different ranks of skills. And in order to unlock the next rank or tier of skills, you have to have spent X amount of points above that. So, for instance, for the second one here, Lieutenant Commander, I have to have at least 5 points spent above that in order to unlock the Lieutenant Commander abilities. For Commander, that's 15 points. Captain, that's 25 points above that. An Admiral requires 35 points above that. So, the thing is you can't go in and just max out all of the admiral level skills at the bottom. By the time you've unlocked admiral, you'd only have 11 points to work with. So there are some limitations here, and that's why you want to make sure you have a plan going into putting together your skill tree, because if you end up going in and redoing your skill tree a couple months later, that can mess with loadouts a bit. So ideally, you want to get your skill tree right the first time. Otherwise, you're going to have to spend a bit of time at redoing some loadouts. And let's start off here with the ground side of things. So at the top left is a node for boosting up your weapons, your weapon criticals, your weapon penetration. At the top right is boosting up your hit points, your resistance, and your hit point regen. At the bottom left is boosting up your shields on ground and your shield resistance. And then at the bottom right is kit performance and kit efficiency, which is boosting up. Kit performance is boosting up how effective your kit modules are. Kit efficiency is boosting up how quickly your kit modules are going to recharge. So with pretty much every build out there, the combo that you see is everything at the top left and everything at the bottom right. The issue with how combat is designed in Star Trek Online, especially once you get to an endgame level, is that the best defense is taking out your enemy before they have a chance to inflict that much damage on you. So, for basically every build out there, what you're going to see them do for ground is what you're seeing me do here. Everything at the top left and everything at the bottom right. Because boosting up how effective your weapons are, your weapon criticals, and then boosting up your kit modules, how effective they are and how quickly they recharge, that is just such a better combo in endgame play that it pretty much renders the shield and hit point buffs here irrelevant. I wish that the game was not quite that static in how it's designed, but with how the game is, this is pretty much the combo you want to go with for ground. Now, for the odd numbered selections at the very bottom, these are going to be career specific, and these are just what abilities can you train on your bridge officers. Whatever one you don't choose, you can just buy off the exchange. So doesn't really matter what you pick. You can always go and see, which is selling for the most on the exchange so that you can craft them to sell yourself. But really does not matter for these odd numbered selections. The even numbered selections, though, do have some really important buffs on them. And for the second one here, you're going to want to pick device expertise. This is going to massively increase the duration that your ground devices are active. So let's get that. For number 4 here, I'm going to go for improved aim. This is going to give you some extra damage when you're aiming, so definitely go for that. And by aiming, what I mean by that is when you hit, like, if you're on PC, when you hit X on ground, you'll see that your character's like this and you have that aim buff there. That's what aiming is. I'm not talking about the first person stuff that not many people like. I'm talking about X. I don't know what that's like on console, but that's how that works on PC. At number 6 here, I'm going to go with. Well, honestly, you can do whatever. This one's personal preference. You can take the run speed buff when you use melee, or you can debuff your foe. I'd probably go with debuff, but I mean, I know some people would prefer speed. For number 8 here, go with improved flank damage. Again, anything that's just giving you resistance doesn't really matter. So take any of the damage buffs you can get. And that means at number 10 that I would go with offensive mastery. So basically just go with a fully offensive loadout here. That's going to be your best way to go for ground with pretty much any ground build. Some people may disagree, but I think you'll find that this is basically the ground skill tree that everyone has been using at a high level for like the last 7 or 8 years that we've had this skill tree system. And heading over to the space side of things here, I'm going to go through each tier left to right as I select which abilities I want to go with. And for any of these abilities, if you want to take a closer look at them, you can click on them to see some details on what exactly they do. But over on the STO Wiki, the new one, stowiki.net, there's really nice breakdowns for each of these skills, and if there's any of them that have interactions with abilities or there's other things out there that give those skill points, they have a full list that goes through everything. And with Hull Restoration, you can see that that is something that's buffing up a bunch of different heals out there. So if that was something you were wanting to look into for your specific build, then this is going to give you information to help you make your decisions. And they have the same page for each and every skill out there. They have breakdowns of the ground ones as well, and the ultimate abilities, which we'll get to here in a few minutes. But that's a very good resource. Make sure you're using it, and that will be linked down below and also will be in a pinned comment. And before you go through and start selecting points, something else you may want to factor in is if you're going for any of the ultimates that these different careers have. So it doesn't matter what your actual captain career is, any career can use any of the ultimates that the skill tree has. Attack captain can use the engineering ultimate if they want. A psi captain can use the attack one, and so on. So this is separate from whatever your specific career is. Now, these ultimates offer a few different perks depending on, what playstyle you're going for. The engineering one here is EPS corruption, and what this does is it applies a plasma dot to your foe. When target fires energy weapons, it causes them to do damage to themselves, and you can further enhance that. When the target fires energy weapons, you can also make them drain power. You can set their whole regen to 0 and half their incoming healing, and you can cause them to do that plasma damage to other foes within 3 kilometers of them. Now, this probably sounds fun on paper, but in order to get that, you would have to spend 24 points in the engineering tree, which is not exactly optimal, as you'll find out throughout this video. Next up, we have the Science Ultimate, Probability Manipulation. And while this is active, it is going to set your crit chance to 50% for 15 seconds. The issue here is that if you're over 50% crit chance, this will cause you to be locked at that 50% while this is active. This does not stack with any other crit buffs out there. So when you hit this, you are locked at that 50% crit chance. When the skill tree revamp first came out, I think it was about 8 years ago, this was something we did run for a little bit because power creep hadn't developed as far. Many of us were barely pushing 30 to 40% crit chance. So back then, this was good. But in the 2020s, a lot of builds are surpassing 50% crit chance. In fact, a lot of high-end builds are at 80, 90, or even 100% crit chance. So this ultimate really isn't worth it in the current state of the game. You can enhance this by getting a hull and shield healing buff from it also, with the probability shell enhancer. You can make it give you some stacking armor pen. You can get some Mac and defense from it, but with all the buffs there, the issue remains that while this is active, it's locking you at that crit chance, and it just isn't worth it right now. It used to be cool, but that was several years ago. And then you have the Tactical Ultimate Focused Frenzy. This is something that you will apply to a foe, like EPS Corruption. Probability Manipulation is the only one here that you just use on yourself. But with Focused Frenzy here, this is going to give you some Firing Cycle Haste for energy weapons when damaging a marked foe, up to 5 stacks, so up to 20% haste. And those stacks do expire after not hitting the target for 2.5 seconds. And you can get some enhancers for it. So when you hit a foe while Focus Frenzy's on them, it'll have a 10% chance to give some cooldown reduction to your abilities. You'll get 8% bonus weapon damage per frenzy stack for 15 seconds. So with 5 stacks, that's 40% Cat 2 bonus weapon damage. And then you have Team Frenzy, which is going to give that Focused Frenzy buff to your allies. So in the current state of the game, the Tactical Ultimate is what most people go with. Not everyone's a fan of that, but ultimately the Tactical Ultimate and the tactical side of the tree are going to be what most of you are going to want to focus on, and it's what I'm going to focus on here in the video today. And starting off here on the space skill tree with the first tier here, which on the Fed side is called Lieutenant. At the left, we have Hull Restoration, which is going to buff up any hull heals that you have. So, like I showed on the Wiki page before, Ox to Sif, Inch Team, things like that would be buffed by this. Then we have Hull Capacity, which is, as it says, going to increase what your maximum hull is. So with 1 point in this is plus 15%, and if you take it up to 3, that's plus 30. So this is one that I would probably just max out nowadays because you're getting the survivability from that, but you're also getting a damage buff from it because your hull capacity is going to buff up the amount of crit chance you're getting from Tyler's Duality, a rep trait that you get from the Discovery Reputation. So you're getting that extra crit chance from it, so I would definitely go ahead and pick that up because it is serving multiple purposes. For science, we have Shield Restoration, which is buffing up shield heals and shield capacity, and I would just skip over both of those. On the tac side, we have Energy Weapon Training and Projectile Weapon Training. These are both giving a nice Cat 1 buff to both energy weapons and projectiles, so I'm going to go ahead and max those out. There we go. And that unlocks the second tier now, Lieutenant Commander. And at the left here, we have EPS Flow. This is going to improve how quickly you're able to transfer power between subsystems and how quickly you can recover power. I would go ahead and pick up both Electroplasma System Flow here and Improved EPS Flow. That is generally good to have on any energy weapon build. Then we have Impulse Expertise. I would put at least 2 points into this because this is buffing up your speed and turn rate. And for most of you, a third point would probably be of interest here also. This is also going to buff up anything that scales off Impulse Expertise, like Temporal Surge. I believe Evasive's buffed by it. So there's a few different things buffed by this skill. So if you want more speed and turn rate, that's a skill you'd want to go for. Then for the science side here, we have Control Expertise, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Expertise and Improved Control Expertise. Right now, we have a really nice trade out there for energy weapon builds called Fragment of AI Tech. You can buy this off the exchange, and this will give you a Cat 1 energy weapon damage buff based on what your Control Expertise skill is. And this caps out at plus 30% at 300 control. So that is a really nice trait to run on energy weapon builds, and the control is buffing up any controls you'd use on your ship. You have a grav wheel, that control expertise is going to help you out. There's also control amplification, which is going to debuff foes when you use a control on them. I used to run this, but I don't think you need to worry about it with how much debuff we have nowadays. And to the right of that, we have Drain Expertise, and this is going to help you both increase your drains and also resist drains. Some of you may prefer to put a point into this, but for right now, I'm going to skip over it. And there's also Improved Drain X and Drain Infection under it. I used to run Drain Infection on my skill tree, but I've just found that it just isn't doing enough damage. So for right now, I'm going to leave that off because it just Drain I don't really need on my current build, and the Drain Infection, it's just not doing what it needs to do for me. On the tack side, we have Targeting Expertise, which is giving accuracy, and Defensive Maneuvering, which is giving defense. In the past, I did 2 accuracy and 1 defense, but nowadays I think I'm going to go with 3 accuracy. And that gives us the commander tier. And again, going to engineering, we have hull plating, which is giving resistance. I'm going to completely skip over that. I just don't think it's worth it. Then we have damage control, which is giving some regen. But the issue with this is if you look at it, it says total regeneration rate bonus in combat is only a fifth of the top number there. So given that the regen is so nerfed when you're in combat, I just don't think it's worth it. For the science side here, we have shield regen. Again, I don't think that's really worth it. And shield hardness, this is shield resistance. I'm not going to put any points there. On the attack side, we have weapon amplification, which is giving crit severity. And if you get all 3 points of this, that's 40% crit severity. So I am going to max that out. And then we have weapon specialization, which is giving 4% crit chance for weapons when it's fully maxed out. So I am getting that. And we are 1 point short of unlocking the next one. So let me get advanced impulse expertise here. There we go. We have captain unlocked. At the left, we have defensive subsystem tuning. This is plus shield and ox power. So this is plus 4.8 for each. I'm going to skip that. And under that is just some extra power you can get for those specific subsystems. For the second engine one here, we have offensive subsystem tuning, which is plus 4.8 weapons and engines. Some of you may want to pick that up. For right now, I'm going to leave that alone. And it, again, under that is plus weapon and plus engine power if you want more. For the science, we have EPG. I'm going to max that out because there's a lot of nice interactions with the EPG skill here. There's a lot of things that are buffed by that. For long-range targeting sensors here, I'm going to go ahead and max that out because that is going to reduce how much damage your energy weapons lose based on distance. So normally, you would have 50% less damage against a foe that is, about 10 kilometers away from you. This will take that penalty down to a max of 20%. So I'm going to max it out because that is going to massively help my weapons. And then for tack, we have hull pen and shield pen. So at max, that is plus 10 hull pen and plus 5% shield bleed through. I'm going to max both of those out. And then we have the Admiral tier here. So at the left side, we have Warp Core Potential. This is going to give plus 3 to all subsystems. Normally I go for this, but for this very moment, I'm going to leave those alone. Then we have Engineering Readiness, which is going to reduce the cooldown of engineering abilities. We have Scientific Readiness, which is going to give some cooldown reduction for science abilities. Shield Mastery, which the first node of that will negate an incoming critical hit once per 20 seconds. Then there's Shield Absorption, which will give up to 20% of the incoming critical hit as shield healing to all facings. And then Shield Reflection, where it will reflect up to 20% of that damage back at the foe. This isn't really that good because NPCs don't have a very high crit rate. Most NPCs you fight against have a crit rate of around 2.5%, so not very good. And on the tack side here, I'm going to max out Coordination Protocols. This is giving a buff to both your hanger pets and any teammates that you're playing with. And it's considered like good manners to just go in and have this maxed out if you're playing in team content. And if you're wanting to buff up pets, this is just good to have unlocked in general. So We're going to unlock coordination protocols, defensive and offensive coordination. And then we're going to pick up tactical readiness here for the tactical ability cooldown reduction. And that leaves us here with 3 points. So at this point, you do have a few different options, but what I normally would do here is I'm going to pick up Warp Core Potential because that's +3 to all subsystem power. And then I like to go for Warp Core Efficiency. This will look at what your lowest subsystems are power-wise, and it will give those extra power. You don't have to do this. Some people prefer to, put the point up in Drain Expertise or put it elsewhere, but I'm just going to put it here because that's what I normally do. And you'll see that there's some extra power given to both shields and engines there. It's not much, but that was some extra power. And then for this last point, I mean, there's a few different options here. I can put it into offensive subsystem targeting, give myself some extra power. I could give myself a point of Drain Expertise. There's a few different options here, and I normally would go with offensive subsystem targeting here. But these bottom 3 engineering points here, if you have somewhere else that you want to put those, then those are very flexible points. If you don't feel you need that extra bit of power, you can put them into Drain Expertise. If you want to have a buff to Hull Restoration or whatever, if there's anywhere on this skill tree that you would rather put those 3 points, those are basically your 3 flex points. But if you keep at least 2 of those in engineering, that's going to give you the second engineering node, which gives you +10 hull capacity, which is quite nice because right now, ignore the build on this ship, it's very old, but right now on this character, I'm at 129k hull, and when I select that max hull capacity, you're going to see in a moment here, it goes up by, about a little over a K. So you can get that little bit extra hull capacity out of that. I would also go battery expertise here because that's going to massively, that's basically doubling the duration that your batteries last in space. I know the hangar health will appeal to some of you, but go for battery expertise. It is so impactful. That's making all your batteries last twice as long. Really good. For the shield one, or the science one here, I would go with sector space travel speed. And for the TAC ones at the bottom, a lot of people go threat control. If you don't care about threat control, you've got hangar weaponry here to get that +10% damage buff for your hangar pets. But if you're doing a tank build, you'd probably want to go threat control. But if you're just looking to max out your pets, hangar weaponry is right there. For projectile crit chances or damage, I would go with crit chance. For energy, weapon, crit chance, or damage, I would go for the crit chance. For accuracy or defense, I'd go with accuracy. And for the ultimate enhancers, given you have 27 points into tactical, just go for all 3 of them. That's one thing too with the skill tree here is a lot of people forget to hit these nodes at the bottom. And there's some really nice buffs you get out of, hitting those. So once you've got what you want from the skill tree, make sure you're hitting the nodes at the bottom that are lit up green for you to select. So yeah, that's the generalist tree that I would go with right now. Like I said, if you don't want the power buffs, you can easily take those and move them somewhere else on your build. You can max out, drain expertise if you want that extra drain. If you want to play around with, the shield regen, the whole healing, shield healing, whatever, shield capacity, you've got plenty of options here. But I think for everything below, or everything at the top 2 tiers here for engineering, I'd keep probably as is right now. The science, I think everything here most builds should have, and tactical, you do have some flexibility. Like if you don't want to have all that readiness, you could, maybe move a point up into defense. But if you're trying to do the tackle and you're trying to max it out with 27 points, you're basically putting all but you're basically maxing out the tack tree, all but 3 points of it. So that is pretty static on most builds. So hopefully this has helped you guys. I know this is a skill tree very similar to what you've probably seen on other builds, but this is what I would consider like the generalist skill tree right now. And these power buffs, again, those are the easiest that you could strip away for something more specific for your build. So you don't want that extra power. There's flexibility there. If you really do feel you need the resistance, then that's where the points probably would want to come from. So that's going to be it for this specific video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down below. And if you're looking for help with regards to any skill tree related topics, there is a section over on the Builds Discord dedicated to talking about skill trees. You can see skill trees that people have completed that they've posted up there. So if you're ever looking for help with your specific skill tree, then I'd really recommend you check out the Builds Discord. But that's going to be it for today. As always, thank you to all channel members and viewers for the continued support. See you guys around.